Welcome to the United Distributors Wine 101 e-learning. Please make sure your sound is turned on as this course is narrated. If you would like to view the menu or narration notes, please click the three bars in the upper left corner of your screen. This course is designed to help you answer questions such as the history of wine, how wine is made, the fermentation process, and how grapes are crushed. Your ability to discuss these topics is important for you to establish and build credibility with colleagues, vendors, prospects, and existing customers. By completing this course, you'll have the foundational knowledge to form context about the flavor, texture, and price of wine, among other things, to be of value in serving your customers. This course contains unscored knowledge checks after each main topic to ensure you can recall and apply the concepts you learned. Upon successful completion of this course, you will be able to recall facts about the history of wine, describe characteristics of wine, list the components of grapes, and explain the 6 main steps in making wine. Module 1, Basics of Wine. Wine has been produced for thousands of years. The earliest known winery is the 6,100-year-old Arani I winery in Armenia. The earliest known traces of wine are from Georgia in Europe, 6000 BC, Iran, 5000 BC, and Sicily, 4000 BC. Wine was consumed and celebrated in ancient Greece, Thrace, and Rome. Throughout history, wine has been consumed for its intoxicating effects. America is the 4th largest wine producer in the world, and in sheer volume, the U.S. is the largest wine consumer in the world. It's a rapidly growing population with an expanding export market. In the U.S., the annual per capita consumption equals approximately 16 bottles per person versus our French friends at 69 bottles per person. Still, wine sales continue to grow throughout the U.S., with retail sales and points of distribution expanding. On-premise consumption continues to grow by the glass. Wine is an alcoholic beverage made from fermented grape juice. It can be from any fruit, such as oranges, apples, cranberries, etc. However, most wine is made from wine grapes. Wine grapes are smaller, sweeter, contain many seeds, and have thicker skins than table grapes. Wine grapes take an entire season to ripen, which is why wine is produced just once a year. Let's learn about the term vintage. Click each image to learn more. When you're finished, please click the next button to continue. When you see a vintage year listed on the label, it represents the year the grapes were picked and made into wine. The term vintage combines vinum, the Latin word for wine, and age, which implies the year it was made. A vintage wine is one made from grapes that were all or primarily grown and harvested in a single specified year. In certain wines, it can denote quality, as in port or champagne, where houses make and declare vintage wines in their best years. Each vintage is characterized by unique growing conditions that affect how the finished wine will taste. These include, but are not limited to, rainfall, wind, hail, frost, and fires. Therefore, harvest seasons are different depending on the location. For example, in the Northern Hemisphere, Europe and the US, harvest season is from August through October, while in the Southern Hemisphere, South America and Australia, it's from February through April. A 750 milliliter bottle of wine contains 2.8 pounds of grapes, approximately 520 grapes, 800 calories or so for average red or white wine, but can be as much as 1,440 for a dessert wine. Overall, it's around 84% water, 14% ethyl alcohol, and 2% other flavor compounds including acid, glycerol, sugar, phenols, minerals, and more. Click each image to learn more about sulfites and wine. When you're finished, please click the next button to continue. Sulfur dioxide is the most widely used and controversial additive in winemaking. The controversy stems from the fact that sulfur is prevalent in processed foods and thus is on the rise as a concern for health problems, from allergies to migraines to body swelling. Its main function in wine is to inhibit or kill unwanted yeasts and bacteria and to protect wine from oxidation, or in simple terms, spoiling. On the positive side, sulfites are considered preservatives and antioxidants. Sulfites develop naturally as a byproduct of fermentation in very small amounts, ranging from 6 to 40 parts per million. The presence of natural sulfites is so small that it normally does not present a problem except for the most sulfite-sensitive people. In addition to natural sulfites, for centuries, winemakers the world over have added tiny amounts of sulfite to wine, allowing it to age and develop to its full flavor potential. Most wines with added sulfites contain only 25 to 150 parts per million, although in the US, the legal limit in wine is 350 parts per million. The US requires labeling for sulfites in wine above 10 parts per million. A grapevine will produce approximately 20 to 30 pounds of grapes per harvest. The grape skin contains color, tannin, and flavor. The amount of color, tannin, and flavor in wine is determined by the length of maceration. In winemaking, the process of maceration, or skin contact, from grape skins, seeds, and stems, is used to increase the concentration of phenols in wine. Phenolic compounds, natural phenol and polyphenols, include a large group of chemical compounds that affect the taste, color, and mouthfeel of wine. For example, the grape stalk contains tannin and can be quite bitter. Therefore, they are used sparingly, if at all, in most fermentations. The grape seed or pip contains bitter oils and tannin. The pulp contains sugar, fruit acids, and water. Fun fact, the juice inside most wine grapes is clear. The color of the wine comes from contact with the skin. Module 2, How Wine is Made. In its most basic form, the recipe for making wine from grapes goes something like this. Harvest the grapes, crush the grapes, ferment the grape juice into wine, age the wine, fining, filtration, and bottle the wine. Let's explore each step in a bit more depth. How grapes are harvested. The harvesting of wine grapes is one of the most crucial steps in the process of winemaking. The time of harvest is determined primarily by the winemaker's decision to pick, based on the style of wine they wish to produce. The ripeness of grapes affects acid levels, tannin levels, and sugar levels, measured in Brix. The ability to calculate these sugar levels in liquid form allow winemakers to calculate what the alcohol content will be after fermentation. The weather can also shape the timetable of harvesting, with a threat of heat, rain, hail, and frost causing impeding damage to the grapes, including various vine diseases. The temperature of the grapes when harvested can affect grape quality. Therefore, many winemakers choose to harvest at night, keeping sugar levels stable. In addition to determining the time of the harvest, winemakers and vineyard owners must also determine whether to use hand pickers or mechanical harvesters. Click each image to learn more. When you're finished, please click the next button to continue. Hand harvesting. Despite the costs, some wineries prefer the use of human workers to hand pick grapes. The main advantages to this method are the knowledge and discernment of the worker to pick only healthy bunches, and for gentler handling of the grapes. In addition, the production of some dessert wines requires individual berries to be picked by hand. In areas of steep terrain, it would be virtually impossible to run a mechanical harvester through the vineyard. Mechanical harvesting. A mechanical grape harvester works by beating the vine with rubber sticks to get the vine to drop its fruit onto a conveyor belt that brings the fruit to a holding bin. One of the benefits of mechanical harvesting is their relatively low cost. A harvester is able to run 24 hours a day and pick 80 to 200 tons of grapes, compared to the 1 to 2 tons that an experienced human picker could harvest. Disadvantages of mechanical harvesting include the potential damaging of the grape skins, which can cause maceration and coloring of the juice that is undesirable in the production of white and sparkling wines, and can bring the risk of oxidation and a loss of some of the aromatic qualities in the wine. How grapes are crushed. Crushing the grapes is the process of breaking the skin of the grape, releasing the juice. For many white and sparkling wines, the grape juice is not exposed to the grape skins. However, for most other types of wines, mixing the juices in the skin during fermentation is very important. Wineries now use crusher destemmer machines to crush and remove the stems from the grapes. The grapes are funneled from containers into the machine, destemmed, and then crushed. Pressing grapes instead of crushing them can help prevent the juices from mixing with the skins. A wine press is a device used to extract juice from destemmed grapes during winemaking. There are a number of different styles of presses that are used by winemakers, but their overall functionality is the same. Each style of press exerts controlled pressure in order to free the juice from the fruit. Crushed or pressed, wine that is ready for fermentation is known as must. What is fermentation? The process of fermentation in winemaking turns must into an alcoholic beverage. During fermentation, yeasts transform sugars present in the juice into ethanol and carbon dioxide as a byproduct. In winemaking, the temperature and speed of fermentation are important considerations, as well as the levels of oxygen present in the must at the start of the fermentation. Fermentation risks. The development of several wine faults can occur during this stage, including the risk of stuck fermentation. By definition, a stuck fermentation is a fermentation that has stopped before all the available sugar in the wine has been converted to alcohol and CO2. This can last anywhere from 5 to 14 days for primary fermentation and potentially another 5 to 10 days for secondary fermentation. Fermentation may be performed in stainless steel tanks, open wooden vats, inside wine barrels, or in the bottle itself as in the production of many sparkling wines. Typically, white wine is fermented between 64 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, though a winemaker may choose to use a higher temperature to bring out more complexity. Red wine is typically fermented at higher temperatures up to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Click each image to learn more. When you're finished, please click the next button to continue. White wines. Only the juice is kept. Skins, stems, pulp, and seeds are discarded. The juice is fermented in either stainless steel, temperature-controlled tanks, or in oak barrels. Pink rosé wines. Dark-skinned grapes are allowed to macerate in contact with the juice for a relatively short period of time until the natural pigments, anthocyanins, lightly color the juice. Red wines. Dark-skinned grapes are allowed to macerate in contact with the juice for longer periods of time, sometimes up to 4 weeks. This produces a deeply colored red wine with lots of extracted aroma, flavor, and texture, as well as an additional component called tannin. Secondary fermentation, also known as malolactic fermentation, is the conversion of malic acid, citric acid, into lactic acid, milk acid. This fermentation is started by bacteria instead of yeast and has the benefit of reducing some of the tartness and making the resulting wine taste softer. Many red wines and some full-bodied white wines go through the malolactic fermentation. Once fermentation is complete, any remaining skins, seeds, and stems, otherwise known as pomace, must be removed from the wine. Both fining and filtration are optional treatments that can be done to further polish or finish the wine just before bottling. Think of it like this. Clarification and stabilization are the processes by which insoluble matter suspended in the wine is removed before bottling. This matter may include dead yeast cells, lees, bacteria, tartrates, proteins, pectin, various tannins, and other phenolic compounds, as well as pieces of grape skin, pulp, stems, and gums. Click each button to learn more. When you're finished, please click the next button to continue. Fining is the process where a fining agent is added to the wine to create a bond with suspended particles, producing larger molecules and larger particles that will precipitate out of the wine more readily. Unlike filtration, which can only remove particles such as dead yeast cells and grape fragments, fining can remove soluble substances such as larger chains of tannins. This reduction of tannin can reduce astringency in red wines intended for early drinking. Several types of fining agents include egg whites, gelatin, and fish bladders. Filtration works by passing the wine through a filter that captures particles larger than the filter's holes. Complete filtration may require a series of filtering through progressively finer filters. Aging process. Many lighter style wines do not need aging before they are bottled and sold. These are typically light and fruity wines, such as Pinot Grigio, Riesling, and rosé wines that are best enjoyed young. However, most red wines and many white wines benefit from aging. How is aging done? During this process, complex chemical reactions involving a wine's sugars, acids, and phenolic compounds, such as tannins, can alter the aroma, color, mouthfeel, and taste of the wine in a way that may be more pleasing. Aging can be performed in stainless steel tanks, wooden barrels, or in the bottle, and can be as short as 2 to 3 months, or as long as several years or more before the wine is released. The most common aging vessels are black oak barrels. French white oak and American white oak are most popular in winemaking, but it is not unusual to see Hungarian oak, Slovenian oak, etc. Click each button to learn more. When you're finished, please click the next button to continue. French white oak is grown in 5 major forests, strictly regulated by government. It is a tighter grained wood, so the characteristics extract more slowly. It imparts many classic spices and roasted elements, such as clove, coffee, toffee, cocoa, etc. American white oak is typically taken from forests in Minnesota, Missouri, and Oregon. It imparts dill, smoke, and many sweet or floral aromas into the wine, such as vanilla, coconut, caramel, etc. Bottling of the wine. Wine ages in 2 ways: aerobically, while it is fermenting, being pressed, racked, and prepared for bottling, and anaerobically, after bottling, when the myriad subtle chemical changes occur away from the air, other than what is dissolved in the wine at bottling, and produce true bouquet and complexities of flavor. Wines are bottled with either a cork or a screw cap, depending on the winemaker's preference. Many of wine's great characteristics come after a wine has been properly bottled. The quality of an aged wine can vary significantly bottle by bottle, depending on the conditions under which it was stored and the condition of the bottle and cork.